Death in the world of the Pokemon anime typically comes in one of three flavors. 1. A villain meeting their demise. 2. A canned Ash Ketchum fake death that is immediately reversed. Or 3. A much rarer flavor of death, the kind that is wrapped in tragedy and meaning that shakes the Pokemon world and its viewers. And if we were to pin down just one character death that shattered lives, set cataclysmic events into motion, and somehow may have ended up leading the world to a greater good, then of course we need to tell the tragic tale of Ambertwo. Flashback to just before the turn of the millennium. Your boy Charles had just started smashing butts in Super Smash Bros. Crazy Bones were flying off store shelves. The Sega Dreamcast was enjoying the quiet before the storm, and it was the era of unstoppable Pokemania, in the midst of which the very first Pokemon movie brought us the story of an angsty Mewtwo's quest for revenge on the world responsible for its creation. And while the most recognizable scene of Mewtwo Strikes Back has to be that of Ash Ketchum sacrificing himself and coming back to life, take one, there was another character who never made it. A character whose heartbreaking death preceded the events of the film, drove one man to insanity, and brought the controversial Mewtwo project to fruition in the first place. This character isn't even mentioned in the original theatrical release of the movie itself, so to understand the impact of this character and their death, we need to look to the supplementary 10-minute prologue that was released with the full version of Mewtwo Strikes Back in Japan, and later with Mewtwo Returns video release overseas. A prologue which connects the dots between the death of a young girl, a madman, and the Mewtwo project. The uncut story of Mewtwo's origin begins by shedding light on the project's research lead, Dr. Fuji, who Giovanni of Team Rocket sent to acquire a sample of Mew's DNA with which to create a superpowered clone intended to become the strongest Pokemon in existence. Dr. Fuji, a man with a ferret growing out of his chin who only helped Giovanni in order to receive funding to drive forward his own, much more personal research project. For Dr. Fuji, success in the field of cloning promised something much more valuable than a superhuman Pokemon or the creation of dispensable cogs to drive forward military ambitions. Rather, it promised a second chance at life for someone very precious to him. That is to say that the driving force that led to the success of the Mewtwo project was Dr. Fuji's ambition to achieve the synthetic rebirth of his deceased daughter, Amber Fuji. Trying to resurrect the dead, that always turns out real well. As the story goes, dear Amber had died years ago at a tender age, hurling Dr. Fuji into rough seas as he sacrificed his sanity to his research in a never-ending struggle to give her a second life as a clone, and in the process, he ended up losing not just Amber but also his wife, who had no choice but to leave a man who simply had not been able to come to grips with the reality of death and had descended into madness instead. Delusional, desperate, and left alone with a single misguided purpose in life, Giovanni's offer to provide Dr. Fuji with funding for his cloning research on the condition that he cloned the mythical Pokemon Mew threw him a false lifesaver, an opportunity to finally bridge the gap between his current self and a precious past he simply could not let go of. Of course, truly reviving his dead daughter in any genuine sense was always a fool's errand, and Dr. Fuji's fatherly but grief-twisted love ultimately brought about his own demise, along with the deaths of several clones and an entire team of scientists, when his experiments led to the creation of the world's apparent strongest Pokemon, Mewtwo. A clone bred into an existence of loneliness and contempt who pretty much wanted to put an end to both humanity and Pokemon. But that wasn't to say that Dr. Fuji was entirely unsuccessful with his personal project. Before Mewtwo ever gained consciousness, there were other clones: Charmander 2, Squirtle 2, Bulbasaur 2, and Ambertwo. Indeed, Dr. Fuji actually was able to resurrect his daughter as Ambertwo, a living, breathing clone. Sort of. While Ambertwo had a physical form and could communicate telepathically with her clone cohort, she was an imperfect life form confined to life in a test tube. And whereas Mewtwo's genetics and raw power would enable his survival, Ambertwo's fragile existence would quickly crumble back into the void. And yet, even in her short-lived reincarnation as Ambertwo, Amber Fuji would continue to play an important role in the world of the living, by way of her second death. Long before Mewtwo ever opened his eyes to communicate with people in the outside world, Ambertwo communicated with him telepathically. She showed him fragments of the real world from the memories left with her by the original Amber Fuji, and introduced Mewtwo to her friends, the 3 other clones in their cohort. Friends who soon passed away. Of course, Ambertwo's life would soon be snuffed out as well, and when her turn came, she spoke with Mewtwo, as the bell tolled and the Reapers came for her. With tears streaming down Mewtwo's face as his only friend dematerialized in front of him, Ambertwo said to him, "You should be happy. You're alive, and life is wonderful." After which, she left Mewtwo alone in a dark world of fear and despair. As Mewtwo's emotions ran wild, the scientists at the lab erased his memories to keep him under control, effectively destroying any of the love he may have otherwise had for humans, and setting up the existential crisis that would fuel his destructive ambitions in Mewtwo Strikes Back. The prologue ends with Dr. Fuji lamenting the second and final death of his daughter, and Mewtwo, alone in the darkness, asking himself, "I remember something. Life is wonderful. But why?" The death of the young Amber Fuji was certainly tragic, but the impact on her father's life was no less a tragedy, as his obsession with engineering her false rebirth dragged him into a spiral of depression and madness that ultimately led to his own death as well as the deaths of many others. And so, beyond the ideas of being different from one another but living under the same stars in peace, and of being defined by our choices in life rather than our origins, these ideas that take the forefront in the Mewtwo Strikes Back film itself, the prologue gives us another takeaway that is very practical on an individual level, that the only way to move forward is to leave the past in the past. While certainly we should take our memories and experiences along with us, dwelling on what is finished can be highly destructive. The good times come and go, the good people come and go, but if you cling to what is already gone, you will take yourself out of the present and very likely destroy your own future, as Dr. Fuji did. To live in the past is to make yourself little more than a hollow husk in the present, and to limit your potential in the future. On the other hand, in the face of tragedy and loss, if you can avoid getting caught up on what was but what now simply isn't, if you can keep moving forward when the now seems to pale in comparison to the beauty of the was, sooner or later good times and good people are likely to come again. Or at least, that's what I think. But how about you? Do you think Amber Fuji's death is the most tragic death in the Pokemon anime? Would things have been any different if Mewtwo's memories of Ambertwo had never been erased? And are you clinging to the past or moving forward? As always, let's chat.